Morant with a running start. Elevate! Oh, it dunks! Oh, my goodness!
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn his heat. It's good! Memphis on top. 7 tenths remaining. Conley now a three. Count it! A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant! He hit it! Ja Morant, insanity!
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish. The league announced the Ja Morant suspension. He will be suspended for 25 games. It is a significant, and I think it's fair to call it a historic suspension. It is literally one of the longest suspensions in NBA history. I think if you're a person who wants to push back against the suspension, you could point to some other comparisons, although none of our historic standards for these suspensions are exactly apt. And, of course, the main issue for Ja Morant that makes the situation unique is the repeat nature of the violation and the fact that there was a commitment from Ja not to do these actions again. And then, of course, the fact that he's a star. So, yeah, we can point out 25 games is one of the biggest suspensions ever. You can point to a suspension in 2007, which, again, a different era of NBA basketball, a different commissioner. In 2007, Stephen Jackson fired a gun into the air outside of a strip club, pled guilty to a felony, and got 7 games. You can point to the Javaris Crittenden and Gilbert Arenas horrible situation in the early 2000s where they both pointed handguns at each other on team property in the locker room. Crittenden got 38 games for that. Arenas got 50 games. So what Ja did, which again, as everyone is going to correctly point out, was not illegal, but what Ja did does not rise to those instances. But I think the league, because of his star status, because of the repeat nature of these things, they decided this was within their purview to make the suspension, and it seems like no one is appealing or objecting to it officially, as in Ja Morant. He released his own statement, which I'll get to in a second. Ja Morant just takes responsibility for making poor decisions. The Grizzlies team statement, rather strong, I feel like. The Grizzlies announced, "We respect the league's decision to suspend Ja Morant following this latest episode. Our standards as a league and team are clear, and we expect that all team personnel will adhere to them." Ja is going to be away from the team until December. Part of the suspension, it's not just the 25 games. You remember the team already suspended him for all team activities when this video first came out. But now, part of the return to play policy, we're not sure what it is. They're going to have to set up a plan. And Ja has to remain, essentially on probation. He has to not commit another thing in the next 6 months. So it's 6 months where Ja Morant's going to be away from the team. It's going to cost him a lot of money. We've already pointed out the previous incident, the previous suspension from the league for conduct detrimental to the league, cost him making All-NBA probably. And that, in turn, meant he missed out on tens of millions of dollars in his extension. He did not become a Supermax eligible player. He lost millions of dollars in salary last season. Bobby Marks is saying this current suspension will cost him $7.6 million in salary. He's missing over $300,000 per game he misses. The league's statement. The league says they found Ja Morant intentionally and prominently displayed a gun while in a car with several other individuals as they were leaving a social gathering in Memphis. They point out that he wielded the firearm knowing he was being recorded, knowing it was being live streamed, and despite having made commitments to the NBA and having made public statements that he would not repeat the conduct for which he was previously disciplined. That, to me, I think, and to everyone, it's clearly the most important thing. He had made commitments to the league. He'd made commitments to his team that he was not going to repeat this behavior. It is not a legal issue, as Adam Silver has pointed out. I mean, for them, it's a money issue. It's a marketing issue. They market Ja Morant as a star of the league. Silver's quote in this statement says, Ja Morant's decision to once again wield a firearm on social media is alarming and disconcerting given his similar conduct in March, for which he was already suspended 8 games. Silver points out that, quote, the potential for other young people to emulate Ja's conduct is particularly concerning. Under these circumstances, we believe a suspension of 25 games is appropriate and makes clear that engaging in reckless and irresponsible behavior with guns will not be tolerated. Personally, and I don't know if you care about my personal opinion, I mean, personally, I'm all for that. Personally, I abhor guns. I think what Ja did is inexcusable. I think for him to do it after pledging to not make any more distractions for the team, it's shocking. And it's hard to believe it happened, frankly. I know people are going to have different opinions about that and say people can do whatever they want. But, I mean, Ja Morant made this mess, and I don't have that much sympathy for his behavior. Now, I do have sympathy for whatever he might be going through. And Ja Morant's statement says that he's going to continue to receive treatment, for his own stress, for his own well-being. Ja Morant takes responsibility for his actions. He says, quote, I've had time to reflect, and I realize how much hurt I've caused. I want to apologize to the NBA, the Grizzlies, my teammates, and the city of Memphis. He says he's sorry for the harm he has done. He says to the kids who look up to me, quote, I'm sorry for failing you as a role model. I promise I'm going to be better. He says he's going to spend the offseason and his suspension continuing to work on his own mental health and decision-making. He's also going to be training so that he's ready to go when he can get back on the court. He finishes his statement by saying, I hope you'll give me the chance to prove to you over time I'm a better man than what I've been showing you. As Grizzlies fans, we're all cheering for Ja Morant. We have a lot of love for Ja Morant. We want what is best for Ja Morant. And so now he has to deal with this situation. My other reactions to this, which don't really matter, I guess you can kind of nitpick. I feel like some of the words in the league statement. Also, you can nitpick some of the things that Adam Silver has said previously. Like Adam Silver, before the NBA draft lottery, is like, oh, we uncovered additional information. If they did not present any of the additional information to us. This is basically just what we already knew. What we already knew was significant. The fact that he posed with a gun again, that was significant. But Adam Silver being like, oh, we uncovered new stuff. I mean, maybe they did and just chose not to release it out of respect to Ja Morant. Also, in the league statement, they said he intentionally and prominently waved a gun. I feel like those descriptors are subjective and debatable. I know the league was trying to come out forcefully and make this argument for why this suspension was so long. For me, personally, I felt those two words kind of weakened their argument. It's like, why are you trying to hard sell me on this? I mean, I guess it's prominent that he had the gun, but was it intentional? Was it prominent? I don't know. I mean, obviously that doesn't matter, but that was one of my kind of initial reactions to the wording of the league's statement. I do think some of the harshness of this penalty, which again, I'm comfortable with, goes to a point that Chris Harrington made very, very well. It's something that perhaps I hadn't heard emphasized enough. It rang true with me. Chris was saying just how all of these incidents, and that, of course, is the big deal, is there's so many incidents that have been reported, and even if there hadn't been firearms proven in some of them, you had the situation with the team bus where the Pacers team officials complained to the NBA about a possible firearm, And then you had the video in Denver or outside of Denver where clearly there was a firearm involved. And then you had this latest video in May where there's a firearm involved. That's 3 instances, and that's not even counting the other stories that have come out in TMZ and the Washington Post about interactions or confrontations he had a year ago and longer ago. That's just 3 instances right there. The Pacers game, the situation in the garage after the Pacers game, the Denver video, and then this latest video. That's 3 incidents where the league had to launch an investigation. The fact that the league has to constantly investigate exactly what happened with a firearm, now 3 times with a star, that's the huge deal. And that is why I think we see such a large suspension. Now, what does this mean for the team going forward? Does it change your offseason plans? I don't really think so. I think if you can make a trade with Tyus Jones before the draft that gets you a wing back, you're still going to do it. You're going to find a way to survive these 25 games. Also, the team knows that we're playing for the playoffs now. I mean, maybe you can dial that back and say, hey, we're just playing for Ja Morant and what's best for Ja Morant. Like if Ja Morant can't get control of his behavior, well, not much of the rest of the team building means that much. It's going to be hard to win an NBA title, at least, if Ja Morant isn't around and isn't available and isn't responsible enough to lead the team. So we hope this 25-game suspension will lead to Ja becoming a better person and thus helping the Grizzlies on the basketball court, although certainly those concerns are secondary to Ja being able just to handle his stresses and handle his life. But I don't think as far as team building, it means like you have to hold on to Tyus Jones. Even though if you did hold on to Tyus Jones, he's going to put up some monster numbers over the first 2 months of the season. Would that bolster his trade value? Possibly. I mean, I do think most NBA teams know what Tyus Jones is at that point, but would Tyus Jones be worth more in a trade if he's averaging 16 points and 8 assists and the Grizzlies have like the 3rd best defense in the league or something, after the first 25 games of the year? Maybe. Does it mean in the draft, this coming draft on Thursday, that you choose to draft a point guard prospect? I think they might do that anyway because Tyus Jones is on an expiring deal, and it might seem like the time to go ahead and get someone who can handle the ball and be your future either backup point guard or someone who can share ball handling responsibilities alongside Ja Morant. So I don't really think the suspension is going to affect anything they do this offseason. I mean, maybe it affects how they use their two-way spots. Maybe they'll bring in a point guard to be on a two-way spot. Just sort of like how they had Jacob Gilyard on the team at the end of the season, just because they literally needed someone to dribble the ball against the Thunder in the final game of the regular season. So maybe that will affect how they use their two-way spots or who they take in the second round. It's probably not going to affect who they take a swing on in the first round or any potential trades they might be considering. So I guess we can close with the final quote from the league statement where Adam Silver says, quote, "For Ja, basketball needs to take a back seat at this time. Prior to his return to play, he will be required to formulate and fulfill a program with the league that directly addresses the circumstances that led him to repeat this destructive behavior," end quote. So again, that goes to this return to play conditions he's going to have. We don't know what those are. And it's just basically going to be Ja Morant staying out of trouble and somehow demonstrating to the Grizzlies and Robert Pera and Zach Kleiman and also the league, Adam Silver, that he is changed. He is able to be an ambassador for the league. He's able to be a role model. And then I'm sure after that, the league will have no problem promoting and advertising him and possibly putting the Grizzlies back on Christmas Day. His 25-game suspension should end a couple of weeks before a Christmas Day or a potential Christmas Day game. Am I being cynical and thinking they would promote him for that? Yes, I am, but I also think I'm right. Also, finally, one bit of breaking news. This is all breaking news, but this just came out. The Players Association has released a statement saying they are unhappy with the arbitrary nature of the suspension. They say, quote, "We believe it is excessive and inappropriate for a number of reasons, including the facts involved in this particular incident, and that it is not fair and consistent with past discipline in our league. We will explore with Ja all options and next steps." So perhaps Ja might appeal, or the Players Association might appeal, but this statement doesn't really say if they are actually going to. But that is the most up-to-date information I have for you. Anyways, thanks you guys for listening. Please, if you haven't yet, subscribe to the Grits and Grinds YouTube channel. Hope you guys are having a great Friday. Talk to you soon. Go Grizz.